Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Your Career Unscripted. I'm your host, Jane Bernhard, and I interview business leaders and rising leaders on their career journey, and I share their stories to inspire you to build a career on your own terms. I am very, very excited about our guest today. Our guest today is Sarah Bond. As president of Xbox, Sarah Bond leads the organization driving Xbox's innovation and growth across hardware, software, and services as part of Microsoft's global $23 billion gaming business. Her portfolio also includes strategy, product and engineering, marketing, and commercial planning and operations. Previously, Sarah served as corporate vice president, game creator experience and ecosystem, where she led the division dedicated to building and commercializing products and services for game creators and partners. She was foundational to the success of Xbox Game Pass and the expansion of Xbox Game Studios and Xbox Cloud Gaming. She also played a key role in the $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. Prior to Microsoft, she was a member of the senior leadership team, which led the turnaround of T-Mobile. Sarah is vice chair of the board of directors at the Entertainment Software Association, ESA, sits on the board of counselors at the USC School of Cinematic Arts, and is a member of the Lightspeed Advisory Council. Sarah holds a BA in economics from Yale University and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Sarah has dedicated her career to transforming cultures, re-architecting organizations, accelerating businesses, and most importantly, empowering others to do the same. Hi, Sarah. Okay, I'm going to tell you from my perspective how this interview came to be because I'm really, really grateful to be able to speak with you. So the first guest on my podcast, as you know, was Shawn Layden. And when after I interviewed Shawn and I was thinking, who else do I really want to interview? I was like, well, this is such a reach, but someday, maybe if I emailed Sarah Bond's team enough times, I could get connected to her. Because I had seen a talk that you gave at South by on gaming, and I just think...
Were you there? Did you see that one?
I wasn't there. I live in Austin, but I wasn't there. But I remember I had seen that. And the way that you speak and the way you tell stories, it's so impactful. And then I just went down a rabbit hole. This was before I had my podcast. So then when I was thinking, who would I want to interview? I was like, well, that's like the most reach person that I can think of. Like, I just was so excited to speak with you. I'm so honored to get to learn from you personally, because I feel like I've heard your advice from YouTube. But anyways, thank you for the time.
Well, thank you for that lovely intro and for the compliment. It is really, really great to be here. And I'm so happy to get to connect with you today.
You have had such a dynamic career from McKinsey to T-Mobile to Xbox. You've been in leadership at the highest levels. Can you talk about what you took away from each chapter of your journey and also what pushed you to move on to the next chapter?
I mean, if I reflect on all of it, there is a theme that stitches everything together, which is that it's really important to recognize that change is the only constant. And so once you embrace that, you can do things that lean into the change that drive more growth and opportunity versus loss. And it just happened over and over again in every place I've been. And it's all grounded in the end about really listening to your customer, and in particular consumers, which are such a driving force. And instead of looking at the status quo of the way something is, or the way that even you are in a system, challenge all of those assumptions and say, really, is this the most relevant thing? Is this the way it most should be done, given what's happening now? And how can I actually transform, grow, change things to deliver to people something they want before they've even asked for it, or when they're just starting to realize they need it, that leads to the next thing and the next thing and the thing after that. And it's true of businesses, but it's also true of yourself. Like, it's very easy to get stuck and say, well, I've done it this way, or I know this organization, or I know this thing. I'm just going to keep doing that thing. But if you embrace the idea that that thing is going to change, so why don't you just change faster than it? You grow and learn in ways that you wouldn't expect.
I think that's such a beautiful sentiment. And I have a question for you off of talking about change. When I was doing research for this interview, I heard you talk about on another podcast how your godmother told you once that becoming is greater than being. And that relates to what you just said. And that eventually you realize that there is no being, there's only becoming. I thought that was such a beautiful sentiment to really embrace growth, and that what you said, change is the only constant. I'm wondering what that realization meant to you personally and how that has helped you as you approach your career. Like, has that realization helped you through the growing pains of transitions?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think it's really easy to beat yourself up or compare yourself to someone else or something else and lose energy and, frankly, your drive to take risk because of what comes out of that. And when I realized that there is no steady state, I started to think about, okay, if that's true, what am I driving myself on? How do I know that it was good? And I eventually concluded that the only person you can ever beat in life is your younger self. That's all you're looking at. And that's what you can completely control. If there's all this external things happening all around you, you think you can predict it, but you can't. And I think if anything of the past 5 years has told us is the level of things that have happened that we like literally never thought we would ever see. So you let go of trying to predict that and you say, what can I control? I can control, hey, am I still becoming? Did I look at what I did yesterday and say, okay, did I like that? Did I not like that? What could I do better? And can I just get better than the previous version of Sarah? And I would also say the same is true of organizations. Can the organization get better than the previous version of the organization? Every single day, a tiny little bit adds up to a whole career or an entirely transformed business. And so the realization of that inevitability, that actually the goal is not to reach some steady state point at the end. That steady state point at the end doesn't exist. The goal is to just continue to turn out better and better and better version of yourself every day. So one of the things I did is I set this bar for myself about every day. And was a day a good day? And I asked myself at the end of every day, like, did I bring my A game? Was I the best version of Sarah that there, did I study hard? Did I work hard at it? Did I try to put my best foot forward? When I did it, did I create other opportunities for other people to put their best foot forward? So I brought more people along. I opened up the aperture of like creativity and thinking and impact. And then did I do it in a way where if my mom saw it, she'd be like, yes, I'm proud of my girl. She was kind, she was thoughtful. And if I do that every single day consistently over time, that then the results are there and you continue to learn and grow and enjoy what life is really about.
I think, oh, I'm so excited to be speaking with you. That's such an impactful sentiment. And I'm wondering if you were speaking directly to someone who struggles with comparing themselves to other people and is kind of trapped in that headspace of, okay, well, I'm if I look from where I am to like where I used to be, I'm proud of myself. But then when I see my peers, I'm not anymore. And I feel like I hear that a lot from younger people, that they really struggle with that. I struggle with that too. I'm just curious if you're talking directly to someone who hears what you're saying, but doesn't know how to put into practice. What would you say to that person?
Well, first of all, if you feel that way, the only thing that you can control is yourself. So every minute that you spend externally comparing yourself versus internally deciding what you can do different is wasted on you closing the gap. It's a very mathematical distribution of time. Like if you're really bothered by this, stop looking there and look here and ask yourself, well, what can I do to change it? What am I going to do tomorrow that was different than yesterday? But the other thing is there's like this I had this realization that like a grade, like if you're grading yourself in a comparative way, it can be really damaging because you're less likely to take risks that actually get you to the true end state that you're looking for. So, the first time I experienced this is I took Spanish in college. I got an A in Spanish in college. And the way I got an A is if somebody asked me what I had for breakfast, I'd always had orange juice. If someone asked me how I was doing that day, I always said so-so. If someone asked me what my favorite color was, it was always the favorite color. If someone asked me what I was wearing, it was always the same thing. So I essentially just memorized the things that that you need to memorize to do the test. And then I got an A on the test. And then I went to Spanish and somebody asked me something and I wanted to actually accurately answer the question versus what you have to do for the test. And I immediately couldn't communicate and I didn't really know Spanish. I got an A in Spanish, but I didn't know Spanish. So by focusing on this comparative thing, like did I get an A? Was I top of the class? I achieved something, but it had nothing to do with the actual goal of speaking Spanish. And I realized I was doing that because I was just afraid of getting a low grade. Like I didn't want to take a risk. I could have in the class tried to push my vocabulary or try new phrases and all of those things. That might have led to a B- in the particular class where I did that the first time. But then when I got to Spain, I would be better. And so I think it's also just important to like focus on the true goal. The true goal isn't how you are relative to the person next to you. There's all sorts of things going on with the person next to you that you can and cannot see. The true goal is how you're doing relative to who you wish to be. And that is also what is most in your control. And so it is distracting. Like it happens for everybody. Like none of us are perfect. It definitely happens to me and has happened to me a lot in my career. But then when you really unpack it, you're like, well, what do I do about it? Right? What do I do about it? And then when you focus on what you do about it, there's a lot of research on this. Actually, you just get happier because then there's a feedback loop and there's a reinforcement mechanism. And it is really amazing. Like it's so, I remember when I was starting out and I would look up, I was like, there's no way I could be that person, or there's no way I could do that thing. Like, I don't even understand how I can get from here to there. And it's incredible what happens when you just do a little bit every day over 20 years. And suddenly things that seemed, impossible. Like, I don't think if I was 6 years old, I would have sat back and said, oh, one day you're going to, run a global gaming platform and be one of the most powerful people in one of the most important industries in the world. That wasn't how 6-year-old Sarah thought of it. 6-year-old Sarah just liked to play King's Quest 2 and was trying to figure out how to read.
I'm going to listen to that back for myself because I think that's really, really helpful advice to compare yourself to what you were doing before and to stay in like the gain of that. Because I've struggled with that, even just like from pivoting from acting to business. I was so lost when I went to business school because I was like, wait, who am I compared against now? Because I have no experience. So am I comparing myself to other business school students who have been in business for a really long time? Am I just me? And so that mindset would have helped me so much if I had heard that and internalized that a few years ago. So I'm glad you shared it, especially for someone who might be like going through that now.
Well, and the thing of it is that if you're trying to be somebody else, you'll never be as good as somebody else because they're them. And it's actually true for a business. Like, oftentimes businesses will say, well, I see this player doing this, so therefore I need to do it. But you're in a different situation than that other business. You have different assets, capabilities, team, geography, a bunch of variables. So you'll never be really as good as what somebody else chose to do based off of their particular set of things. And so one of the things I think about is like, well, how do I want to turn up as me? Like, how does my brain and my body in this role, in this moment in time, drive a specific impact, a specific outcome that leverages the very best of what I am and what I can do? And that is actually the best thing you can do for any organization that you're a part of. If you're trying to be someone else, then you might as well just put someone else in that role because they're going to do it better than you. And so it's very freeing because I think sometimes we can get trapped in this idea that that's a selfish act. But it's not. It's the most selfless act to figure out a way that you can turn up and give the best that you have, personally, that you have to any given situation that you're in.
And one of the things you mentioned is if you earlier in your career, or not even earlier in your career, I think you started at 6 years old, looking forward, you would never be able to imagine all the things that you've accomplished. Was there a moment earlier in your career where you felt, I want to be in leadership and I'm going to step on these building blocks and get myself to that position because I want to impact global organizations? Do you feel like it kind of happened step by step, or was there like a light bulb moment for you where you felt like I want to be in that leadership position?
Well, really for me, the light bulb moment is when I had my daughter and I went back to work after I had her. And it wasn't right when I went back to work. It might have been like 18 months in, the point where she's like walking and talking. And when I'm leaving for the day, the move is to like wrap her arms around my legs and say, don't go, Mom, don't go. And I have like this beautiful little person, like, sweet little face, curly hair, gorgeous little outfit, don't go. And you're like, how can I tell her no? Like, this is heart-wrenching. And then I really thought about, why was I still choosing to walk out? And what should I be doing out there that it would make worth it for me personally on an emotional level to go do that? And I just determined that I wanted to have an impact into the world that she walked out into. That given what I'm good at, like what I like, where my energy comes from, the best service that I could do for her and frankly for society at large was having an impact in that world, in the business world. I enjoy it. I've got some talents at it and all of those things. And that started to reframe it for me because it no longer became about, well, I have to do this job, or here's an obligation, or it's about this paycheck, or this is what I always said I would do. It started to be about me thinking about how I left the greatest impact in the world for the people who came after me. And may they be my own children, but anybody's children, or anybody who uses any of the products and services or any of the experiences that exist in the world, because I chose to go in every day and work with a team to make those things possible. And that was when it happened. Sometime in my 30s, it kind of switched. And then I started working at that. And then I got positive feedback on that. And I did some things, like I launched some products and I saw consumer reaction. I was like, wait, I like this. Like this thing I thought maybe I could have never done. Actually, I can do it. So let's try it again, and let's try it in different ways and in different forums, and more impact. And it all went from there.
One of the things that's really interesting when you're talking about impact, it just relates back to a talk that I had seen you do at South by. Because when I think of impact, I also just think of like empathetic leaders who care about the people that are working alongside them. And I know that you've talked about the power of games to cultivate empathy. I imagine that also translates to your leadership philosophy of caring about the people that you work with. I'm just curious what being an empathetic leader means to you, and how the belief of that, like that being very important, informs your leadership style.
Yeah, look, it starts with this fundamental truth that I think we can sometimes lose sight of, which is a leader is not a leader without their team. That actually it's teams that create the value, the things that we love, the impact that we want to drive. There was this Netflix show, it was popular a couple of years ago, about cheerleading teams. And one of the key takeaways for the show is when you make a cheerleading pyramid, there's normally some at the top. It's almost always a girl because she's lighter. She's pretty, her hair's up, it's all sparkly, and everyone is watching her, and she's got her hands in the air. But that actually she would fall to her death if not every single layer of the pyramid were perfectly balanced. And that there's probably a large, strong guy somewhere in the bottom of the pyramid who you're not looking at all, where if he missteps a little bit, literally the entire thing collapses, but you never look at him. And I was like, that's what all teams are like. So if you don't have empathy and caring and understanding for all of the things that make a team come together, then you are not set up to do your very best. You might think it's your best, but it's mathematically impossible for it to be your best. And so it's completely interrelated with creating value in the world, and value that persists beyond any one moment. And value that is not just about a business result or a PR result or a particular moment, but also translates into other people becoming leaders who then do that same thing for others, and so on and so forth. So that it might be, 500 years from now, they'll exist on this earth because you chose to do what you're doing, Jane, and I chose to do what I'm doing. And that's real value, is how you change that. And so that's, for me, where it comes from, is when you recognize that every single day you re-earn the credibility you have with your team, that people are choosing to work. Like, people choose to work in an organization, and they choose to work for a leader, and they can unchoose. So empathy is inherent in actually creating things that exist because people wish to be there, because they have love and commitment, because there's going to be good times and bad times, but you stay through them because that's where, that's inevitable. It's when you stay the course that things really work out. And so it became a larger, like the more senior I got, the more I understood the importance of empathy. When I only had to be empathetic to myself, like when I was in IT, I actually was sort of unempathetic, I didn't give myself a lot of slack. But the more I thought about it, I was like, once you start to think about scaling your impact, it's integral into making that possible.
And, when I hear you talk about that and what you've learned from being in leadership, I think oftentimes when people are earlier in their career, they look at leaders as if they just know exactly what they're doing all the time. They feel 100% confident all the time. But I know, having talked to many people in leadership, that the reality of that is a lot more complex and a lot more nuanced. And so you've been a part of some of the biggest deals in the gaming industry. In those types of high stakes moments, not, it doesn't even have to be any specific moment. What gives you confidence when when there's like a lot of stress, a lot maybe riding on your work?
Yeah. Well, okay, two things. One, especially in some of the really high stakes things, one of them being, which I think you're referencing, like helping get the Activision Blizzard King deal confirmed and all of that. It goes back to, well, what can I control? Like, I could get so stressed about the stakes, or I could focus on what I can control and believing deeply that that was the metric. And I actually wrote a note to the team. I was leading the team that was working on the process, and we had got to this point where we were waiting for a very important decision. And we did not know if the decision was going to be positive or negative. And I wanted to write a note to the team before it came out, because I wanted the sentiment of what the team had done to persist no matter the outcome of the decision. Because what the team could control is what they did. The outcome had many, many variables that had nothing to do with the team. And just focusing on the greatest measure of a team is not the score, but how the team chooses to react when things are hard, when the odds are tipped against you, when you happen to be like playing on a field that's sloped, which I've played hockey on a field that's sloped, and it's really hard. You're like sweating. And so that's what mattered. And so that helped me get out of the head case of what's happening if this. I'm like, let's just focus on this. Let's keep going. Let's do this thing. And then the outcomes over long arcs of time happen. And I found that helped me stay steady, and then helped the team stay steady. And then the outcome is better because you're not, again, spending all these cycles on the what if. The cycle is, let's work through this. Let's work through this. Let's understand this. Let's break down the unit economics. Let's figure out if we can get an agreement with this company to ensure that this thing is no longer an issue. So that's the first. The second is that it feels a lot more stressful to work on something that's really of any type, but definitely higher stakes things, when you constrain the effort to find the solution to your own self. So a lot of times when things get really stressful, it's easy to go into hero mode and say, well, I'm going to fix it, and give me all the information, and I'll figure it out, and I'll like crunch and and right? You know, that temptation, and we're going to get this done. But what you really want to do is the opposite. That you want to contribute the best of your work, but you want to do everything you can to network your brain and everybody's brains on the team, so that everybody is actually looking at the situation, the opportunity, the problem space, and contributing their unique perspective to get to a unique solution that sort of is a multiplier of everybody's IQ and experience and effort. And so what I found is that it takes things that people say that's impossible. Like, there's just no way to solve that. And actually it is solvable. It's just that we couldn't solve it before because we were only looking at it this way, or this way. So when you combine an insight, like I understand how something works technically, and I get the unit economics of something, and I understand the broader gaming ecosystem and how all the relationships relate to each other, and I understand the regulatory and political environment across a range of countries, and I have a perception, or I have insight into how marketing and PR read into how people are going to engage with these types of decisions, and you bring them all together, it's a lot easier to actually unspool something and create a novel solution. So it both leads to better results, but it reduces your stress because you don't take it all on you. What you do is you create up a system whereby the team can work on it together. And it actually gets to be fun. You're like, wow, this is really hard, but we're working on it together. I used to sometimes say to the team, I still say, I was like, I don't know. I mean, do you want to play the biggest game in the world? I like to play the biggest game in the world. I signed up to play the biggest games in the world. So we, you know what I mean? So let's just enjoy that we're playing the biggest game in the world and look at it like that. And we're not going to always get it 100% right, but over time we're going to figure it out. Why? Because we've got great people with great opportunity, with lots of insight, and we just need to come together and just keep coming back at it. Okay, that didn't work. Did this work? We learned that. This was successful. And you keep doing it again and again and again, and then you start to see things, and that de-stresses the whole system.
And so that mindset of the importance of the team and leaning on people, caring about people, caring all of that, and also what you talked about of zooming out and seeing the whole picture instead of just the one thing that you're looking at. Where does that come from for you? Was there a specific person that inspired that thought process for you? Like, I'm wondering if you had those qualities innately, if those are things that someone said something and it resonated with you and you realized, oh, things are so much better when we just do it all together. And when I zoom out and I have this perspective, just wondering if there was a person or something someone said that really impacted you.
There really isn't any one person, to be honest, Jane. Some of this is things I've learned from other leaders I've worked with. Some of it's just lived experience. Like, I tried other methods that didn't work. Like, earlier in my career, I tried I'm going to solve it. You know, like I did. It was me recounting like early Sarah stuff, and then that not working, and then seeing an example of another leader that did a version of that, and thinking, well, how can I do that? And so I would say I've tested and learned into it over many, many different moments and interactions. But I also do think it's a bit of the nature of the career I've had. Like, one of the special things that I've gotten to experience in my career is that I haven't been asked to go really deep into any one function. Mm-hmm. I've actually had the experience of working in and managing multiple different functions. And so you like develop an appreciation more for, okay, I understand like BD or strategy really well. And then when I added to that, okay, I understand marketing and engineering really well, you start to see things differently. And so I think if I'd had a different career, it might not have come as intuitively to me because I would have only learned one system. But instead, I got the opportunity to learn multiple systems across multiple companies. And so it became more and more natural for me to say, okay, well, let's bring all these other people along. Let's look at it from this angle and this angle. So I think it's a combination of just like lived experience and sometimes doing things and not having it work out, or sometimes seeing somebody else do something and not having it work out. And the opposite, seeing other people do things that are pretty cool and say, oh, I'm going to give that a try. I would say there was a moment, right when I started at Microsoft that really impressed me as it relates to this. I was in a meeting with Satya and a sales team had lost a deal, and the customer had like written a very detailed email as to why the deal was lost that was not complimentary to the team at Microsoft. And they brought it in and they projected it in the meeting. And I was brand new and I was like, this is not good. I had been in other cultures where that would lead to a really not good meeting, and I was shocked. Yeah. And he looks at it, he reads the email, and he goes, well, that's really disappointing. Are we working on implementing changes responding to this feedback? And the team said, yep, we're doing this, this, and this. And that wasn't, like, if I were to pick any one moment that really informed my leadership style, it was that moment. Because one of the things that's important, like, you can say all of these things about empathy and bringing people together, but if people don't feel safe, it doesn't matter. And if people don't feel there's the room to say, okay, we tried that and it didn't work, or a mistake was made, and they're spending the energy covering that up or trying to explain why it wasn't really them and it was someone else, that is all wasted energy towards just acknowledging that it happened, understanding that it happened, and then working together to do something better. And that is a serious part. Like, it's a really key unlock. Like, you can do all these other things, but if people don't feel safe, if they don't trust you, if they think there's a repercussion to failing, all of the risks, or taking on high stakes projects where you don't know what's going to happen, or working with people from different functions who aren't going to necessarily understand you out the gate, so it's harder. People aren't going to want to do those things.
I mean, the needing to feel safe, so important. You have to feel comfortable bringing yourself to the role and feeling like you can speak up and also feeling like you can disagree. Pivot the conversation a little bit. I think a lot of young people are afraid to take up space, are afraid to say they disagree, are afraid to, especially when you're earlier in your career and you're in the first few years of your job, or you're coming out of business school and you've pivoted into something, they're afraid to like own their own opinion, their own value, their own unique perspective. And I'm just wondering what advice you would have to someone who is afraid to take up space and has a lot of ideas that they're not saying because they're either afraid of criticism or they're afraid their ideas won't matter. I'm just wondering what you would say to that person.
Okay. Well, first of all, your ideas completely matter. So never ever believe that. People will tell you that narrative for all sorts of reasons, likely about them, not about you. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing, though, is that you are inside of a system that has a culture in the system. And so one of the art forms is learning how to actually transfer your ideas so other people understand them. And I actually think when you're earlier in career, this is more what it's about. Because if you don't take that time for that learning, and you're like, well, I want to share this idea, we should do this, this, and this, then people tune you out because they don't understand the form that it's coming in. So one of the things I did earlier in career is I said, first I picked my spots. I have 10 ideas. What are the two most important ones? No organization can absorb 10 ideas from every person. It's just how it works. There's prioritization. There's not infinite resource or time. So let me actually pick the one that I think are the two most important. And let me think about that in terms of what's important to me, but also think about that in terms of what's most important to the organization at that moment in time. Let me find the overlap between those. Now let me think about how I'm going to talk about those ideas. And one of the most important things, and I say this anytime you're sort of pushing, I would say, further than people would normally go, or in an area that feels edgy or bold or brave, I think not just about like the content of what I'm saying, but I think about saying it in a way that expresses love for the organization at whole in my heart. Like I always say, speak the truth with love in your heart. Because it can be the exact same content, but when you reframe it as, hey, I'm sharing this because I really want us to succeed, versus I'm sharing this because I don't think what we're doing is right, people's openness to the exact same idea completely changes. And in the end, that's the goal. The goal as a person who's part of a team isn't to get your idea out, it's to get your idea done. Right? So thinking about how you choose those moments and how you communicate it and then honing that. And then once you get really good at that, then you can go to 3 ideas and then you can go to 4 and then you get direct reports and then you get control over an area, But you just find that slipstream of how you learn to communicate your passion, your love, the freshness of it, because all of it matters. It's about how to get it done.
I think that's such great advice. And it makes me think of another career advice question that I want to ask you. People who are, well, I guess everyone, but I'm just thinking of people who are earlier in their career because I've very recently been out of business school. When you're entering the workforce out of school right now, I think there's so much fear of the job market, and AI is upending all of these industries. And I think a lot of people don't know where to invest their time in terms of skills, whether they're in school and they're trying to build skills that are relevant to the future, or they're in a new role and they're not sure if what they're doing is actually going to matter in a few years because technology is changing so much. If you were 21, last year of college, has a year to just focus on building skills, maybe is working, interning, all of that, but is trying to set themselves up for success, what skills would you focus on building right now?
Okay. Well, at first, there's a lot of change going on right now. And we're asking everyone across the whole planet to absorb what is likely, another technological revolution that is happening right now. And that is scary. And I often say to myself that fear of change isn't really fear of change. It's fear of loss. It's loss of the certainty of, if I just went to one of these roles, or if I just got this degree and now I could get a job in one of these places and it would work out. But it's actually about the loss of the certainty. But it's gone. So you have to sort of accept it first mentally and not try and hold on to it and get it back. But then you ask yourself, what is now what is the new certain? Well, then, and that's actually a lot of opportunity if you're coming out right now. If you embrace the fact that, hey, I should learn these AI tools. This is a huge thing that's changing how we work, how we communicate, how we build. What can I do to actually learn and understand them? And for you, like coming out of school, you don't have a whole bunch of ways that you've always done things that you have to unlearn to learn the new thing. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to do Excel any differently than I learned how to do Excel. But it's probably really inefficient. So that's the first thing, is like, whatever that big change is, embrace it, learn it, experiment with it. The second is what really I think all of our educations are about growing up is actually learning how to learn. So really what you want to focus on is, did I do enough things? Did I learn how to learn one thing? And then did I learn how to apply it to another thing and another thing? And can I keep stretching myself? Because this rate of change, like the hastening of the rate of change, I think it's only going to keep going. I don't think it's going to level off. So the degree to which you can learn how to learn when you're in school, when you can say, well, I learned this, let me see if I can learn this in half the time or a third of the time. Can I apply these things in a new area? And then when you get out, yeah, things are going to keep going. We don't know what's going to happen. But what you do have confidence in is your ability to adapt, even as these things are happening.
I love the learning how to learn, because it relates to what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation of like growth being the constant. I'm not sure if that was the exact word you used, change being the constant.
Yes.
Just since we're on that topic, when we talked at the beginning of this conversation about change and about becoming and all of that, I just wanted to ask you, what are you still becoming?
Well, me, I'm not dead yet. I actually was doing the math. I'm like, well, I'm about midway through my career. I'm only midway through. I'm learning how to have greater impact. I'm learning how to do bigger transformations. I'm learning how to be the mom of teenagers versus the mom of young kids. Like, there's so many things that are still changing. I'm learning how to sit on boards and provide advice to other companies. And I might be halfway done with the time and, a quarter to a tenth of the way through with impact. That's how I think about it.
I love that. And do you feel like throughout your career so far, when you look into the future for like the next chapters, have your values and priorities changed drastically throughout those different chapters? And when you look into the future, do you see them changing more? I know we've talked so much about change, so I'm just curious how they've changed for you.
Yeah, they have. When I was younger, it was really about, well, how fast could I advance? What were the priorities for my family, my husband, and my kids? And I took a very sort of narrow and functional view towards the effort that I put out and what I got back. In some ways, I often talk about like the numerator and the denominator. And the numerator is like, what I put in and what I got back. And that's how I thought about it. And then as I got older, I started to realize that there was a bunch of things that I was doing that was having impact on a ton of other people. First, I started thinking about it as it related to my family, but then I started to realize it was having impact on people around me at work, people who were exposed to the work. As I came to Xbox and things got more public, people would come up to me who I'd never met and say, hey, this thing that you did, it had an impact on me. And so I started to think more about the decisions I made as, hey, this is actually part of an interconnected chain that impacts, I'm building on the work of the people who made me. I'm contributing to the people who are next to me, and I'm doing something that the people who come next can build upon. And so if I think about a decision to make or a thing I'm going to do, I don't just think about it in terms of how it relates to me anymore at all. I actually think about it more as it relates to everyone who ever was, is, and will be. And then I ask myself, should I leave this for someone else? Especially when it's something that some people would view as risky. Should I, and I started taking actually more risks as people externally might have viewed it, because I realized that it wasn't about me. My old calculation would have been about me. It was actually about the whole system. And actually by taking more risk, there was more success. Because you think about it in a more global view, you learn new things and all of that. So it has really evolved for me. And now I feel it's just a tremendous privilege to get to lead Xbox. There's so many things that are going on in the gaming industry, with our teams, with the influence of gaming. And I get this opportunity to have an impact, build on everything that anyone had ever contributed to Xbox had done, help the team now who's navigating the shifting environment actually like punch through in this environment and like set up something that comes next. But I only got that opportunity because of a lot of other things that I dove into, that I tried, where I realized I was like, I look left, I look right. I don't see anyone else here who's going to try it. I could not try it. But if I do, then I'm just leaving that. I'm leaving that untried, or I'm leaving that undone. And why would I leave that undone? I've got all of the talent, the capabilities, the resources, the access to give it a whirl, and we're going to learn something from doing it.
That's very inspiring. So I'm currently writing an article on how success means different things to different people.
Yeah.
So that someone's reading it and they look through all these different ways that people view success, and they take what resonates with them, they leave the rest, and they figure out their own personal definition. That's one of the reasons I love doing the podcast, is like hearing the personal advice, personal stories. And so I have one more question for you, which is, at this stage of your career, what does success mean to you? Whether that's personally or professionally, you can interpret that however you like, but I'm curious, what does it mean for you?
I think if I were to sum it up, I would say that on my tombstone, if there was one phrase that someone wrote, it would be, "This is Sarah. She created opportunities for other people to have success." Yeah, I think that'd be it. And that would be a professional statement, but a statement about friends and my kids, and my family. Because in the end, you are you. And so I think about that in like all the places of my life. And that'd be a good ending.
That is a beautiful way to wrap all this up. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your advice, and your wisdom, and for being so generous with your time. I have learned so much, and I'm honored to be able to spend time with you and to get to learn from you and to be able to share this. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jane. This was awesome. And I can't wait to see how it all comes together.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Your Career Unscripted. If something about this conversation inspired you, I'd love to know. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn at Jane Bernhard if there's a guest you'd want to hear from, or if there's a type of background you'd like to learn from, and I'll do my best to make it happen. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe to my Substack and follow the series here. And perhaps share it with a friend who may need some words of encouragement. See you next time.